I froze our bank account that morning, and by dinner, my wife looked at me like I was the person she could no longer trust. I never imagined that one decision meant to protect our future would become the moment that forced us to question everything about our marriage. My name is Ethan Mitchell, and for 18 years, I believed I understood my wife better than anyone else in the world. Lauren and I built our life together from the ground up. We were not a perfect couple, but we were a team. We bought our home in Arizona, supported each other through difficult seasons, and worked hard to create a stable future for our family. I spent years growing my small construction company, often coming home tired but proud that my work helped provide the life we wanted. Lauren was always someone who cared deeply about planning ahead. She worried about unexpected situations, future expenses, and making sure we were prepared for whatever life brought us. I respected that about her. In many ways, her careful nature balanced my more practical approach. I focused on solving the problems in front of us, while she thought about what could happen years later. For a long time, that difference made us stronger. But slowly, something changed between us. We became so focused on responsibilities that we stopped talking about the things happening beneath the surface. We discussed bills, schedules, and daily routines, but we did not always discuss our fears, our doubts, or the decisions we were quietly making on our own. Looking back, I realized that was where the distance started growing. The moment everything changed began with a simple notification on my phone. I was sitting in my office reviewing a project estimate when I saw an alert from our bank. At first, I thought it was just another routine update. But when I opened it, I noticed something that immediately made me stop. There were financial movements I did not expect, connected to a plan I had never heard about. I stared at the screen for several minutes, trying to understand what I was seeing. My first reaction was not anger. It was confusion. The person involved was not a stranger. It was the woman I had shared my life with for nearly 2 decades. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. I wanted to believe I was missing something. But as I looked deeper, I realized Lauren had been making decisions about our shared finances without including me in the conversation. That was the moment I felt something I never expected to feel in my own marriage. I felt left behind. The hardest part was not the money itself. It was the feeling that a decision affecting both of us had somehow become a decision made by only one person. I knew I needed to act carefully. I did not want to create a bigger conflict. I did not want to hurt Lauren or make her feel like I was against her. But I also knew I had to protect what we had spent years building. That was why I made the decision to freeze certain bank account transfers until we could sit down and talk honestly. I thought it would create a pause, a chance for both of us to understand what was happening before anything else changed. I did not know that Lauren would see it completely differently. I did not know that, in her eyes, I had just become the person standing in her way. And I definitely did not know that this moment would reveal a problem in our marriage that had nothing to do with money. After I made the decision to freeze the bank account transfers, I spent the next few hours questioning whether I had done the right thing. I kept looking at my phone, hoping Lauren would call and explain everything before the situation became more complicated. I was not looking for a fight. I was looking for understanding. I wanted to hear her side because, despite everything, I still cared about the woman I had built my life with. Lauren was not someone I wanted to see as an opponent. She was my wife, my partner, and the person I had trusted for nearly 2 decades. But that was exactly why the situation felt so difficult. The person I trusted most was also the person I felt separated from in that moment. When Lauren came home that evening, I could immediately tell she knew something had changed. She placed her bag on the counter and looked at me with a mixture of surprise and frustration. She asked why the transfers had been stopped and why I had made such an important decision without talking to her first. The irony of that question was not lost on me. I wanted to say that I was asking myself the same thing. Why had a decision involving both of us happened without a conversation between us? But instead of reacting emotionally, I tried to stay calm. I told her that I was not trying to control her. I explained that I needed us to slow down and talk before moving forward. Lauren listened, but I could see that she felt hurt. From her perspective, my decision looked like a lack of trust. She believed I had taken away her ability to handle something important. She felt like I was questioning her judgment. Hearing that was difficult because it showed me that we were both experiencing pain, just in different ways. I felt excluded from a major decision. She felt rejected by the person who was supposed to support her. That conversation made me realize how complicated relationships can become when two people are looking at the same situation from completely different perspectives. I wanted Lauren to understand that the issue was not simply about the bank account. It was about communication. It was about making decisions together. It was about feeling like we were still a team. But Lauren wanted me to understand that she had not acted out of selfishness. She believed she was trying to protect our future. She believed she was handling something important because she was worried about what could happen later. The more we talked, the clearer it became that we had both been carrying concerns we never shared with each other. For months, maybe even years, we had been solving problems separately instead of facing them together. That realization was painful because it meant the problem did not begin with one financial decision. It started much earlier, in all the moments when we chose silence instead of conversation. That night did not fix everything. We still had unanswered questions and emotions that needed time to settle. But it was the first time in a long time that we were finally talking honestly. I did not know what would happen next, but I knew one thing. The bank account was never the real issue. The real issue was whether we could find our way back to being partners again. The days after that conversation were some of the most difficult days Lauren and I had experienced in our marriage. We were still living under the same roof, sharing the same routines, but there was a feeling between us that was impossible to ignore. It was not anger that created the distance. It was uncertainty. We both wondered how we had reached a point where two people who had spent 18 years together could suddenly feel like they were standing on opposite sides of the same problem. I spent a lot of time thinking about the years before this happened. I remembered all the moments when Lauren and I worked together as a team. We had faced unexpected expenses, stressful seasons, and major life decisions before. Somehow, we always found a way to move forward. That was why this situation felt different. It was not just about a financial decision. It was about realizing that we had slowly stopped sharing parts of our lives with each other. Lauren eventually agreed to sit down and explain everything from her perspective. I could tell she was nervous because she knew I felt hurt. She told me that she never intended to make me feel excluded. She believed she was making a decision that would create more security for our future. She explained that she had been thinking about possible challenges ahead and wanted to make sure we were prepared. Hearing her say that changed the way I looked at the situation. I still felt that I should have been included in the conversation, but I started to understand that her motivation was not what I originally assumed. She was not trying to take control of our life together. She was trying to solve a problem the way she thought was best. At the same time, I explained why her decision affected me so deeply. I told her that the hardest part was not the financial change. The hardest part was feeling like I was no longer being treated as a partner in decisions that affected both of us. After years of building a life together, I never expected to feel like I was hearing about something important after the decision had already been made. That conversation was uncomfortable, but it was also necessary. For the first time, we stopped defending our own positions and started listening to each other. I learned that Lauren had been carrying worries she never shared. She learned that I had been feeling pressure to protect our future in ways I rarely talked about. We both realized that we had created a habit of handling stress separately. We thought we were protecting each other by avoiding difficult conversations, but we were actually creating more distance. The truth was that neither of us had been trying to hurt the other person. We had both been reacting to fears we never openly discussed. That realization did not erase the problem, but it gave us a place to begin. I knew trust would not return overnight. Lauren knew that my concerns could not simply disappear because she explained her reasons. We had spent years building our relationship, and we needed patience to repair what had been damaged. That night became an important turning point because we finally understood that the real challenge was not a bank account. The real challenge was learning how to face uncertainty together again. After that conversation with Lauren, I realized that understanding each other was only the beginning. Knowing the reasons behind our choices did not immediately repair the trust that had been shaken. It was like discovering where a crack had formed in the foundation of our home. We could see the problem clearly now, but we still had to decide how to rebuild something stronger. For the first time in a long time, we started having conversations that went beyond schedules, bills, and daily responsibilities. We talked about the things we had been afraid to say. Lauren admitted that she had spent months worrying about the future and feeling responsible for making sure we were prepared for unexpected situations. She told me that sometimes she felt pressure to solve problems before they became bigger, and that pressure caused her to act too quickly without realizing how it would affect me. Hearing that helped me see her differently. I still believed we should have talked before any major decision was made, but I also understood that her actions came from concern, not from a desire to hurt me. I shared my own feelings as well. I told Lauren that I had spent years believing my role was to provide stability and handle challenges quietly. I thought that by working hard and taking care of responsibilities, I was showing my love. But I realized I had also created distance by not sharing my own worries. I expected Lauren to understand my intentions without always explaining them. That was not fair to her. Communication could not only happen when something went wrong. It needed to happen before problems appeared. That realization changed the way we approached our marriage. We started looking at our situation less like a conflict between two people and more like a challenge we needed to solve together. We reviewed our financial plans, discussed our priorities, and created a system where both of us had a clear understanding of important decisions. It was not about one person being in charge. It was about making sure both people felt respected. One of the biggest changes was that we stopped assuming we knew what the other person was thinking. Before this happened, I thought I knew Lauren's concerns because I knew her so well. Lauren thought she understood my priorities because she knew how much I valued stability. But we learned that years together do not replace honest conversations. Even people who love each other deeply can misunderstand each other when they stop sharing what is happening inside their minds. Slowly, the tension between us began to fade. We were not pretending the situation never happened. We were not ignoring the difficult emotions. Instead, we were facing them and learning from them. I noticed small changes in Lauren. She started including me more when discussing important plans. She noticed when I was carrying stress and asked about it instead of assuming I was fine. I also changed. I became more willing to express my concerns instead of believing I had to handle everything alone. Looking back, I understood that the moment I froze the transfers was not the moment our marriage became weaker. It was the moment that revealed where we needed to become stronger. The decision created a painful conversation, but that conversation gave us something we had been missing for years. It gave us the opportunity to truly understand each other again. The weeks that followed our decision to rebuild our communication were not magically perfect, but they were different. For the first time in years, Lauren and I were no longer avoiding the difficult conversations that had slowly created distance between us. We started understanding that a strong marriage was not built by two people who never disagreed. It was built by two people who were willing to stay connected even when they saw things differently. That was something I had to learn in a very personal way. I used to believe that if I worked hard, paid the bills, and made sure our family had stability, then I was doing everything necessary. I thought providing security was the clearest way to show love. But the situation with our finances showed me that emotional security mattered just as much. Lauren did not only need a husband who solved problems. She needed a husband who listened, shared his thoughts, and allowed her to understand what was happening in his mind. I also learned more about Lauren during that time than I had in years. I discovered that many of her decisions came from worries she carried quietly. She had always been the person who planned ahead, but I did not realize how much pressure she felt when thinking about our future. She was not trying to take control of our life. She was trying to create a sense of safety in the only way she knew. Understanding that did not erase the fact that we needed better communication, but it helped me replace frustration with empathy. We both realized that we had been protecting ourselves in different ways. I protected myself by focusing on solutions and keeping emotions inside. Lauren protected herself by trying to prepare for every possible situation. Neither approach was completely wrong, but both approaches became a problem when we stopped sharing them with each other. That was the lesson we needed to accept. A few months earlier, I would have looked at our situation and asked who was responsible for the problem. Now, I found myself asking a different question. What could we both do to make sure we never reached that point again? That change in thinking made a huge difference. We created new habits together. We scheduled regular conversations about our finances, not because we did not trust each other, but because we wanted to protect the trust we were rebuilding. We discussed upcoming expenses, future goals, and decisions that affected both of us. The process was simple, but it showed us that transparency was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign of respect. I noticed that Lauren became more comfortable sharing her thoughts with me. She no longer felt like she had to solve everything before bringing it up. I also became more open about my own concerns instead of pretending I always had everything under control. That was a difficult change for me because I had spent years believing strength meant handling everything quietly. I learned that real strength in a marriage means allowing your partner to stand beside you. Looking back, I realized that the financial conflict was only the surface of a much deeper issue. The real problem was that we had slowly stopped inviting each other into important parts of our lives. We were still living together, but we were not always moving forward together. That experience gave us a chance to change that. We were not rebuilding because we wanted to forget what happened. We were rebuilding because we finally understood what needed to change. As Lauren and I continued rebuilding our relationship, I started noticing that the biggest changes were happening in the small moments. It was not one dramatic conversation that fixed everything. It was the everyday choices we made after that difficult period. We became more aware of how we spoke to each other, how we handled concerns, and how we included each other in decisions that affected our future. Those small changes slowly created something we had been missing for a long time. We created a stronger sense of partnership. One of the first things we changed was how we approached financial decisions. Before everything happened, we both had different habits. I preferred to analyze situations, make a plan, and move forward. Lauren preferred to prepare for possibilities and make sure we were protected from unexpected challenges. Instead of seeing those differences as a problem, we started recognizing them as strengths that needed better communication. We realized that our different perspectives could help us if we respected each other's voices. The biggest lesson for me was learning that being included was not about having control. It was about feeling valued. I did not need to make every decision myself. I did not need everything to happen exactly the way I would choose. I simply needed to know that Lauren and I were making those choices together. That understanding changed the way I viewed our marriage. I also saw changes in Lauren. She became more comfortable bringing concerns to me before they became decisions. She stopped feeling like she had to carry every responsibility alone. She began trusting that sharing a problem did not create more stress. Instead, it allowed both of us to work through it. That was a major shift because for years we had both been trying to protect each other in ways that accidentally created distance. We thought avoiding difficult conversations would keep peace, but real peace does not come from avoiding problems. It comes from knowing you can face them together. I started applying that lesson to other areas of our life as well. I became more open about the pressure I felt from running my business and trying to provide stability. I stopped assuming Lauren automatically understood what I was carrying. I learned that even the people closest to us cannot understand what we never choose to share. That realization made me a better husband. It also made our relationship feel more balanced. There was a time when I looked back at the decision to freeze the account and wondered if it was the moment our marriage began falling apart. Now I see it differently. It was the moment that exposed the areas where we needed to grow. It forced us to stop pretending everything was fine and start having the conversations we had avoided for too long. Lauren and I did not rebuild our trust by ignoring the past. We rebuilt it by learning from the past. We acknowledged the mistakes, understood each other's perspectives, and created new ways to move forward. The experience taught me that protecting a marriage requires more than protecting financial stability. It requires protecting communication, respect, and connection. Money can be replaced. Plans can be changed. But the trust between two people has to be carefully built every single day. Lauren and I were not the same couple we were before that difficult moment. In many ways, we became stronger because we finally learned how to stand beside each other instead of trying to handle everything separately. As time passed, Lauren and I began to understand that rebuilding trust was not about returning to the way things were before. In many ways, that version of our marriage was part of the reason we reached that difficult moment in the first place. We had been focused on maintaining our routine, handling responsibilities, and keeping everything running smoothly, but we had forgotten something important. A strong marriage requires two people who are actively involved in each other's lives, not just two people sharing the same home. That realization changed the way I looked at my relationship with Lauren. I stopped measuring my success as a husband only by what I could provide. For years, I believed that working hard, paying the bills, and creating stability was the clearest way to show love. Those things were important, but I learned that love also means being available emotionally. It means asking questions, listening carefully, and making your partner feel like they are not carrying their worries alone. Lauren helped me understand that lesson. She showed me that even when someone has good intentions, they still need to communicate their choices with the person beside them. A marriage is not a partnership only when things are easy. It is a partnership when decisions are difficult, when fears appear, and when both people have to admit they do not have all the answers. I also started seeing Lauren's actions through a different perspective. Before, I only saw the decision she made. I focused on the fact that I was not included. But after our conversations, I began seeing the concern behind that decision. Lauren had been thinking about our future, our security, and the possibility of unexpected challenges. Her mistake was not caring too much. Her mistake was believing she had to handle those concerns alone. My mistake was believing that my efforts automatically showed Lauren everything she needed to know. We both had been communicating through actions instead of words, and that created a gap between us. The experience taught me that assumptions can slowly damage even the strongest relationships. We assume our partners know what we mean. We assume they understand why we make certain choices. We assume that years together remove the need for honest conversations. But none of that is guaranteed. Understanding has to be created again and again. Lauren and I started making time for conversations that were not about solving problems. Sometimes we simply talked about our goals, our memories, and the things we wanted for the future. Those moments reminded us that we were not just managing a household. We were two people who had chosen each other and wanted to continue growing together. I noticed that the tension between us slowly disappeared. The fear that we might never fully trust each other again became smaller with every honest conversation. We were learning how to handle challenges differently. We were learning how to disagree without creating distance. Looking back, I realized that the hardest part of the entire experience was not the financial uncertainty. It was accepting that we had both contributed to the silence that allowed the problem to grow. But that realization also gave us hope because it meant we both had the ability to create change. Lauren and I did not rebuild our marriage by pretending we never struggled. We rebuilt it by accepting that struggles are part of every relationship and choosing to face them together. That choice became the foundation for a stronger future. Months after the moment that changed the way Lauren and I viewed our marriage, I started noticing something I never expected. The situation that once felt like the biggest challenge we had ever faced had become the reason we understood each other better than before. It did not happen overnight. There was no single conversation that suddenly erased all the doubts or repaired every feeling. Instead, trust returned through small moments, consistent actions, and the decision to keep choosing each other every day. One of the biggest changes was the way we approached important decisions. Before everything happened, we both believed we were helping the family in our own ways. I focused on creating stability through my work and responsibilities. Lauren focused on preparing for possible challenges and protecting our future. The problem was not that we cared too little. The problem was that we cared in different ways and stopped explaining those differences to each other. Once we understood that, our relationship started changing. We became more intentional about sharing our thoughts before making decisions. We did not wait until something became stressful before talking about it. We created space for honest conversations even when there was no immediate problem to solve. That was something we had not done enough in the past. I also began to appreciate qualities in Lauren that I had overlooked during the difficult period. Her desire to plan ahead was not something I needed to fight against. It was something I could learn from. At the same time, Lauren told me she began to appreciate my ability to stay calm and focus on solutions. She realized that my desire for stability came from the same place as hers. We both wanted to protect the life we had built. We simply had different ideas about how to do it. That understanding removed a lot of the tension between us. We stopped trying to prove who had the better approach and started combining our strengths. I learned that marriage is not about finding someone who thinks exactly like you. It is about finding someone who is willing to understand you even when they see the world differently. Another important change was that we became more comfortable admitting when we were wrong. Before this experience, both of us sometimes focused too much on explaining our own choices. We wanted the other person to understand our reasons. But we did not always stop to consider how our actions affected the other person. Learning to say, "I understand why that hurt you," became just as important as explaining why we made a certain choice. That simple change created more compassion between us. Looking back, I realized that the hardest moments in a relationship can reveal the areas where growth is needed most. The situation with our finances showed us that love alone is not enough. Love needs communication. Love needs respect. Love needs two people who are willing to look honestly at themselves and make changes. Lauren and I were not trying to rebuild the exact marriage we had before. We were creating something better. A marriage where we did not just share responsibilities, but also shared our thoughts, concerns, and dreams. The experience reminded me that protecting a future together requires more than financial planning. It requires protecting the connection between two people who choose to walk through life side by side. When I think about everything Lauren and I experienced, I no longer see that difficult period as the moment when our marriage almost fell apart. I see it as the moment when we finally understood what our marriage needed in order to become stronger. At the time, I believed freezing the bank account transfers was simply a decision I had to make to protect what we had built. I thought the biggest challenge would be explaining my choice to Lauren. I did not realize the real challenge would be learning how two people who loved each other could lose connection without even noticing. The truth is, relationships rarely change because of one single moment. They change because of many small moments that happen over time. A conversation that never happens. A concern that stays unspoken. A decision that is made alone because someone believes they are protecting the other person. Those small moments can create distance, even between people who have spent years together. Lauren and I learned that lesson in a way we will never forget. Today, when we make important decisions, we approach them differently. We do not assume we already know what the other person thinks. We ask. We listen. We make sure we are moving in the same direction. It sounds simple, but those small actions completely changed the way we experience our marriage. I also changed the way I define being a good husband. I used to think my responsibility was mainly about providing stability and solving problems. I believed that if I worked hard and protected our future financially, I was doing what I needed to do. But Lauren helped me understand that a partner is not only someone who provides solutions. A partner is someone who creates a safe place for honest conversations. Someone who makes the other person feel seen and valued. Lauren had her own lesson to learn as well. She realized that carrying responsibility alone did not make her stronger. It only made the relationship weaker because it kept me outside of important parts of our shared life. She learned that asking for support was not a sign that she had failed. It was a way of allowing us to work together. The experience changed both of us. We became more patient. We became more honest. We became more willing to admit when we made mistakes. Most importantly, we stopped seeing disagreements as something that could separate us. We started seeing them as opportunities to understand each other better. The biggest surprise was that the thing I thought I was saving was not actually the bank account. The money was important, of course. Financial stability matters. Planning for the future matters. But what mattered most was saving the connection between two people who had spent years building a life together. Lauren and I did not become stronger because we avoided difficult moments. We became stronger because we learned how to face those moments together. We learned that trust is not created by perfection. Trust is created when two people are willing to be honest, take responsibility, and continue choosing each other. Looking back now, I understand that protecting myself was never about standing against my wife. It was about creating a moment where we could finally stop moving separately and start moving forward together. The future we built after that experience was not the same as the one we imagined before. It was better because it was built on something deeper than plans and finances. It was built on understanding, communication, and the decision to face every challenge as partners.